Right now, as you're lying here, something is happening inside your chest that no one on earth fully understands. Your heart is beating, and despite everything medicine knows, every scan, every diagram, every equation, the precise reason a human heart starts beating in the first place, in a tiny embryo just a few weeks old, with no nervous system yet to tell it to, remains quietly a mystery. That's where we are tonight, not at the edges of what's unknown, at the center of it. You've probably heard that science has answered most of the big questions. And in some ways, that's true. We've mapped genomes, photographed black holes, landed machines on other worlds. But here's the thing no one talks about enough. Every answer science finds opens 2 more doors. Every solved mystery reveals a hallway full of locked rooms. The list of things we genuinely, humbly cannot explain is not shrinking. It is growing, quietly, steadily, right alongside everything we think we know. And tonight, that list is yours. 100 mysteries. 100 places where the brightest minds on the planet have stood, looked carefully at the evidence, and said, "We don't know." Not yet, so wherever you are right now, whether the day sat heavy on you and you just need something to carry your thoughts somewhere quieter, or whether you're simply the kind of person who finds more peace in open questions than in answered ones, you're in exactly the right place. Let your jaw unclench. Let your shoulders settle. Let whatever you were holding on to today, the unfinished thoughts, the things you meant to do, the conversations still running in the back of your mind, let all of it set itself down beside you for now. You don't need to solve anything tonight. The only thing required of you is to wonder and to rest. 100 mysteries lie ahead. Some of them are vast, the kind that make the entire history of human civilization feel like a single afternoon. You'll hear about what existed before the Big Bang, why the universe has a speed limit, and whether the reality you're lying in right now might be something far stranger than it appears. Some of them are closer, much closer. You'll hear about a sound recorded deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, so enormous, so unlike anything cataloged, that scientists couldn't name its source for nearly 20 years. You'll hear about an experiment so quietly unsettling that the simple act of watching it changes what physically happens, as if the universe notices when it's being observed. You'll hear about what your own brain is doing right now, in this exact moment, as you drift toward sleep, and why, despite a century of neuroscience, no one can fully explain what that experience actually is. And you'll hear about a signal received from space in the summer of 1977, lasting exactly 72 seconds. Never repeated, never explained. Some of what you hear tonight will feel like something you almost already knew. A quiet recognition, like remembering a dream. Some of it will feel like standing at the edge of something immense in the dark. Not frightening, just large and still, and full of a kind of beauty that doesn't need to be understood to be felt. If falling asleep to the edges of human knowledge is something you'd like to do more often, subscribing means the next mystery is always waiting whenever you need it, one wandering mind at a time. Now, let's begin. Fact 1. Why does anything exist at all? There is a question so simple it stops you cold. Not what is the universe, not how did it begin, but why is there anything at all rather than pure, absolute nothing? No space, no time, no laws, no possibility of anything ever starting. Philosophy has wrestled with this for thousands of years. Physics joined more recently. and both arrive at the same honest answer. We don't know. Some physicists suggest emptiness itself is unstable, that nothing has a kind of quantum restlessness that makes something inevitable. Others argue the universe had to exist because mathematics requires it. But here is what stays with you. You are made of matter that organized itself into the ability to ask why it exists. That is either the most ordinary thing in the universe or the most extraordinary. No one has decided which. Fact 2. What came before the Big Bang? The universe began roughly 13.8 billion years ago, a moment of extraordinary heat and density from which everything expanded outward. But a child's question follows naturally. What was there before? And physics gives an unsettling answer. Not nothing was there, but that the question may not be meaningful. Time itself began with the Big Bang. There was no before, not because something was hiding there, but because before requires time, and time didn't exist yet. It's like asking what lies south of the South Pole. The question sounds reasonable. The geography doesn't allow an answer. Some cosmologists propose the Big Bang was a bounce, a previous universe collapsing and rebounding. Others describe eternal inflation, universes forming like bubbles forever. Each model is mathematically possible. None can be tested. The moment before the first moment remains just out of reach. Fact 3. Why is there more matter than antimatter? When the universe began, physics says it should have created equal amounts of matter and antimatter. Perfect opposites. And when they meet, they annihilate. Completely, cleanly, leaving only light. Which means they should have destroyed each other entirely. Left behind a universe of pure light, cooling slowly in an empty cosmos. No galaxies, no stars, no planets, no you. And yet, here we are, somehow matter won. For every billion particles of antimatter, there were 1,000,000,001 of matter. That tiny imbalance meant a small surplus survived the great annihilation. Everything you have ever seen or touched, every mountain, every ocean, every living thing is the leftover 1 in a billion, the rounding error that became reality. Physicists have confirmed this imbalance exists. Why it exists, why the universe chose matter by exactly that margin remains one of the deepest unsolved problems in all of physics. Fact 4. What is dark matter really? By all logic, the Milky Way should be flying apart. Stars at the outer edges of our galaxy move so fast that the gravity of everything visible, every star, every planet, every cloud of gas, cannot hold them. They should scatter into intergalactic space, and yet they stay. Something invisible is holding them. Something with mass, with gravity, but something that emits no light, reflects no light, absorbs no light. Astronomers call it dark matter. It makes up roughly 27% of the universe, 5 times more than ordinary matter, and we have never directly detected a single particle of it. Decades of experiments, underground detectors, particle colliders, nothing. Right now, billions of dark matter particles may be drifting silently through this room, through your body, through everything around you, leaving no trace, as if the universe built its largest structure from something it decided we were not allowed to see. Fact 5. What is dark energy and why is it pushing everything apart? In 1998, 2 teams of astronomers made a discovery so unexpected that both assumed they had made an error. The universe is not slowing down. It is accelerating. Galaxies moving apart faster and faster, as if something is pushing from the inside out. That something is called dark energy. It makes up roughly 68% of everything, the single largest component of the universe. And it is almost entirely unknown. We have a number that fits the equations. We have no physical explanation for what that number represents. What we do know is this: if dark energy continues, in roughly 2 trillion years, the galaxies visible tonight will have accelerated so far away that no light from them will ever reach us again. Future civilizations will look out at a universe that appears to contain only themselves, not knowing that once the night sky was full. Fact 6. Are we living inside a simulation? This sounds like science fiction. It is also taken completely seriously by physicists and philosophers. The argument is simple. If it's possible to create a simulated universe indistinguishable from physical reality, any civilization advanced enough will eventually do it, likely many times. Which means simulated universes would vastly outnumber real ones, which means the odds of being in the real universe become very small. Philosopher Nick Bostrom formalized this in 2003. The problem is that a perfect simulation cannot be detected from inside. Every test uses the tools of the simulation to examine the simulation, like trying to step outside a dream using only dream logic. Some physicists have searched for subtle computational limits in the fabric of space-time. Nothing conclusive found. The question remains open, whether we are simulated or not. The experience of lying here in the quiet dark, wondering whether the dark is real, feels, for every purpose that matters, completely real. Fact 7. Why does the universe have a speed limit? Nothing can travel faster than light. Not a rocket, not information, not anything. The speed of light, roughly 186,000 miles per second, is not simply the fastest thing observed. It is a hard ceiling built into the structure of reality itself. Einstein's relativity tells us what the speed limit does. As anything with mass approaches it, time slows, mass increases, and the energy required to go faster approaches infinity. You can never quite reach it. But why this limit exists? Why 186,000 miles per second? Why not twice that? Why not infinite? Is something relativity describes without explaining. What we know is what the speed limit creates. Without it, cause and effect break down. An effect could precede its cause. Time itself would become incoherent. The speed limit is what makes reality hold together. A boundary built into the universe. And no one knows who drew it. Fact 8. Is the universe infinite, or does it have an edge? The stars seem to go on forever. But do they? The observable universe, the sphere from which light has had time to reach us, is roughly 93 billion light years across. Beyond that boundary, space continues. But how far? Current measurements suggest the universe is remarkably flat, consistent with either a very large finite universe or a truly infinite one. Both possibilities resist easy comprehension. A finite universe raises the question of what lies beyond its edge. An infinite universe raises the question of what infinite means for something physical. Not mathematical, but real, existing, present. In an infinite universe, every possible arrangement of matter occurs somewhere, including, mathematically, a perfect copy of this moment, this room, you. The universe could be any size. We are left here in this small, bright pocket of it, wondering how far the dark goes, without an answer. Fact 9. Why do the constants of physics have exactly the values they do? The universe runs on precise numbers. the gravitational constant, the charge of an electron, the mass of a proton, the strength of the electromagnetic force. These values are what they are, and if any were even slightly different, not dramatically, just slightly, the universe as we know it could not exist. If gravity were fractionally stronger, stars would burn out before life could emerge. If the electromagnetic force were slightly weaker, atoms couldn't form. The universe appears extraordinarily fine-tuned for complexity for us. Why? 3 answers exist. Pure chance. We're here because the constants allow us to be. A multiverse. Countless universes exist with different constants, and we inhabit one compatible with our existence. Or design. That fine-tuning implies intention. None is fully satisfying. The universe is precisely the kind of place where something like you can lie in the dark and wonder why. That particular fact may be the strangest constant of all. Fact 10. Are there other universes? Our universe may not be the only one. From inflation theory, the idea that space expanded extraordinarily fast after the Big Bang. Some models suggest different regions stopped, inflating at different times, each becoming a separate bubble universe, each with potentially different physical laws. From quantum mechanics comes the many worlds interpretation. Every quantum event that could go multiple ways does go multiple ways, each splitting into its own branch of reality, a universe for every path not taken. From string theory comes a landscape of perhaps 10 to the power of 500 possible universes. None of these other universes, if they exist, can be observed. They are beyond any horizon we could ever reach, beyond any signal we could send or receive. The multiverse may be permanently untestable, a door in the mathematics with no handle on our side. Other universes, perhaps, other versions of everything, existing just beyond the edge of what any instrument will ever see. 10 mysteries, and we have barely left the beginning. The universe is vast and patient, and in no hurry to give up its secrets. Neither are we. Let's continue. Fact 11. What happens inside a black hole? There is a boundary in space called the event horizon. Cross it, and nothing returns. Not matter, not light, not information of any kind. From the outside, we can measure a black hole's mass, watch stars orbit it, watch light bend around it. But what happens beyond that boundary, what actually occurs inside, is something our physics cannot answer. Einstein's equations, which predict black holes with extraordinary accuracy, break down at the center. They produce a singularity, a point of infinite density where the math stops working entirely. Infinite density is not a physical description. It is a confession. Some theorists believe a future theory will reveal something stranger inside. A new region of space-time, perhaps a bridge to somewhere else. Others suggest the interior may be unreachable, destroyed before anything arrives. A place that takes everything and tells us nothing. Fact 12. Where do fast radio bursts come from? For a fraction of a second, something in the universe releases more energy than the sun produces in 3 days. Then silence. Fast radio bursts are intense pulses of radio waves lasting milliseconds, arriving from billions of light years away. The first was discovered in 2007, buried in archival telescope data. Since then, hundreds have been detected. Some appear once and vanish. Others repeat, sometimes with a pattern, sometimes with no rhythm at all. One source was traced to a magnetar within our own galaxy, suggesting at least some have a known cause. But not all fit that model. The repeating ones especially. Their irregular timing, their varying intensity, suggest something more complex. Possibly several completely different phenomena sharing the same name, a millisecond flash from across the universe, carrying a message in a language we are only beginning to read. Fact 13. What is at the center of a neutron star? When a massive star dies, it sometimes collapses into a neutron star, a sphere roughly 12 miles across containing more mass than our Sun, spinning hundreds of times per second. The outer layers are understood reasonably well, but deeper inside, pressures exceed anything reproducible in any laboratory on Earth. Matter at that density behaves in ways that cannot be tested, only theorized. Some models suggest the core contains neutrons packed so tightly they form a superfluid, a quantum state with no friction, flowing without resistance. Others suggest the pressure dissolves neutrons entirely into quarks, creating a state of matter that hasn't existed freely since the first microseconds after the Big Bang. At the center of a neutron star, somewhere in our galaxy right now, matter is doing something. Something we cannot see, cannot replicate, and cannot yet explain. Fact 14. Why do some stars keep perfect time? In 1967, a graduate student named Jocelyn Bell noticed something unusual in her radio telescope data, a signal, repeating every 1.3373 seconds. So precise, so regular, so unlike anything natural that her team briefly labeled the source LGM-1, Little Green Men. It was the first discovered pulsar, a rotating neutron star emitting beams of radio waves that sweep across space like a lighthouse. Some pulsars keep time more accurately than atomic clocks. They are used as navigational references for spacecraft. But why they maintain such extraordinary regularity, given the violent chaos of their formation, is not fully understood. Some pulsars occasionally glitch, spinning suddenly faster before slowly returning. These glitches are thought to involve internal quantum fluids briefly coupling with the crust. The precise mechanics remain unclear. A dead star spinning in the dark, keeping perfect time for reasons we haven't fully worked out. Fact 15. What was the wow? Signal. On the night of August 15, 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio was scanning the sky for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence. Days later, reviewing printed data, a volunteer astronomer named Jerry Eman noticed something extraordinary, a signal lasting exactly 72 seconds, the maximum the telescope's design allowed, matching almost perfectly the predict characteristics of a transmission from an intelligent extraterrestrial source, arriving from a region of sky containing no known nearby star. He circled it and wrote one word in the margin: wow. It has never been detected again, not that night, not in nearly 50 years of subsequent observation of the same region. A 2016 study proposed it may have been a hydrogen emission from an unknown comet. The original discoverer remains unconvinced. The scientific consensus is simple, unexplained. 72 seconds of something that never came back. Fact 16. Why is the sun's corona hotter than its surface? Move away from a fire and you get cooler. This seems obvious. Heat radiates outward from its source, diminishing with distance. The sun's surface burns at roughly 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, extraordinarily hot by any earthly measure. But the corona, the sun's outer atmosphere, extending millions of miles into space, burns at temperatures between 1 and 3 million degrees, 100 times hotter than the surface directly below it. Move away from the sun through its outer layers, and the temperature goes dramatically wrong way. This is the coronal heating problem, and it has puzzled solar physicists for nearly a century. Proposed explanations include tiny magnetic explosions, called nanoflares, and oscillating magnetic waves called Alfvén waves. Both have been partially confirmed. Neither fully accounts for the temperatures observed. The closest star, the most studied object in the universe, still surprising us. What is a magnetar? Imagine a neutron star. Now give it a magnetic field 1 trillion times stronger than Earth's. A magnetar's field is so powerful, it would alter the structure of atoms at a distance of hundreds of miles. When a magnetar's crust fractures in what's called a starquake, it releases more energy in a fraction of a second than the sun produces in 100,000 years. In December 2004, a magnetar 50,000 light-years away, roughly halfway across our galaxy, released a burst powerful enough to partially ionize Earth's upper atmosphere. The most intense radiation burst from beyond our solar system ever recorded striking our planet, from 50,000 light-years away. How magnetars form, why a small fraction of neutron stars develop fields so vastly more extreme, is not well understood. The conditions that tip an ordinary neutron star into something this extreme remain an active mystery. A neutron star that became something else. Something that makes neutron stars look gentle. Fact 18. Why do some galaxies have no dark matter? Dark matter is supposed to be everywhere. It outweighs ordinary matter 5 to 1 across the universe. Without it, by every model we have, galaxies cannot hold together. Which is why, in 2018, astronomers discovered something deeply confusing. A galaxy called NGC 152 DF2 appeared to contain almost no dark matter. Its stars moved at speeds consistent with the gravity of ordinary matter alone. No invisible mass needed. Then a second galaxy was found. Same situation. These galaxies shouldn't exist. Not according to standard models where dark matter comes first, pulling in ordinary matter to form stars and structure. Some suggest dark matter was stripped away by gravitational interaction with a larger neighbor. Others propose a more radical possibility, that these galaxies reveal a flaw not in the galaxies, but in the concept of dark matter itself. Two galaxies that shouldn't be there, quietly rewriting what we thought we knew. Fact 19. What created the cosmic cold spot? The universe has a temperature map. The cosmic microwave background, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang, varies slightly across the sky, and those tiny variations tell us how matter first began to cluster, the seeds of every galaxy that ever formed. But in one region of sky, in the direction of the constellation Eridanus, there is a patch roughly 1.8 billion light-years across that is colder than any standard model predicted. This is the cosmic cold spot. A supervoid, an unusually empty region of space, has been found in that direction, but not large or empty enough to fully explain the temperature difference. Other explanations are more striking. Some cosmologists suggest the cold spot could be a bruise, evidence of a collision between our universe and another universe in the distant past. This has not been confirmed, but it has not been ruled out. A cold patch in the oldest light in existence, perhaps a scar, perhaps a window. Fact 20. Why does the Milky Way have a bar? Most people picture a galaxy as a graceful spiral, arms curving outward from a bright center. Our galaxy has that. But through its center runs something else, a long, straight structure of stars stretching roughly 27 light-years from end to end, cutting across the core before the spiral arms begin. The Milky Way is a barred spiral galaxy. Bars are common, found in roughly 2/3 of all spirals. But why they form, how they persist, and what role they play in a galaxy's life remains genuinely uncertain. Bars are thought to channel gas toward the galactic center, influencing star formation across vast regions. They may feed the central black hole. They rotate at a different rate than the stars around them, slowly evolving over billions of years. We live inside this structure, too close to see it clearly from the outside. Mapping our own galaxy's bar is like trying to draw the floor plan of a house you've never been able to leave. 20 mysteries now. Stars keeping perfect time. A signal that arrived once and never returned. Galaxies that shouldn't exist. A cold bruise in the oldest light in the universe that may be the shadow of another cosmos entirely. The sky is not a backdrop. It is a question. Let's go deeper. Fact 21. What triggered the first ice age? For most of Earth's history, there were no polar ice caps. The planet was warmer, greener, more uniform from pole to equator. Then, roughly 2.4 billion years ago, something happened. Ice sheets descended on a world that had never experienced them. Some geologists believe the freeze reached the equator, a white planet locked in a self-reinforcing cycle of cold that should have been permanent, and yet it ended. The most accepted trigger involves oxygen. Early photosynthetic bacteria were flooding the atmosphere with oxygen for the first time. Oxygen reacted with methane, a potent greenhouse gas, destroying it and stripping away the atmosphere's ability to trap heat. The planet cooled, then somehow improbably warmed again. The precise chain of events, the timing, the geography, what finally broke the cycle remains genuinely debated. A planet that froze solid and kept going anyway. Fact 22. Why does Earth's magnetic field flip? Roughly 1,800 miles beneath your feet, liquid iron is moving. The outer core, a churning ocean of molten metal, generates electric currents that produce Earth's magnetic field. That field extends tens of thousands of miles into space, deflecting the solar wind, protecting the atmosphere, making complex life on the surface possible. Without it, Earth would likely resemble Mars, but ancient rocks preserve a record of something unsettling. Minerals in cooled lava lock in the direction of the magnetic field at the moment of solidification. And that record shows the poles have flipped hundreds of times throughout Earth's history at irregular intervals. The last reversal was roughly 780,000 years ago. We appear to be overdue. Why the magnetic dynamo occasionally destabilizes and flips. The precise mechanism, the conditions that trigger a reversal, remains beyond current prediction. The ground is stable. The field above you is not. Fact 23. What caused the Cambrian explosion? For the first 4 billion years of life on Earth, the story was quiet. Bacteria, single-celled organisms, nothing with eyes, legs, or a nervous system. Then, roughly 540 million years ago, in a geological window of perhaps 20 million years, almost every major animal body plan that exists today appeared simultaneously. Arthropods, mollusks, the lineage that would eventually produce us. It is called the Cambrian explosion, and no single explanation fully accounts for it. Rising oxygen may have crossed a threshold enabling complex metabolism. The first predators may have triggered an evolutionary arms race. New master regulatory genes may have unlocked vast new possibilities for body forms. The end of a global freeze may have opened ecological niches that never existed before. Each explanation has evidence. None is sufficient alone. Something woke up 540 million years ago. And everything that has ever crawled, swum, walked, or wondered followed. Fact 24. Why is Earth the only planet with plate tectonics? Every other rocky planet we know of is one piece. Mars, Venus, Mercury. Their surfaces are single rigid shells, scarred by craters that have sat undisturbed for billions of years. Earth's outer shell is broken into roughly a dozen major plates, constantly moving, grinding, diving, pulling apart. This process recycles the crust, regulates the carbon cycle, builds mountains, drives volcanic activity, and has almost certainly maintained conditions suitable for life over billions of years. As far as we can tell, it only happens here. Why? Plate tectonics requires specific conditions: the right crustal composition, the right mantle viscosity, enough water to lubricate plate boundaries. Venus, nearly Earth's twin in size, has none of it. What precise combination of factors triggered and sustained tectonics on Earth, and why those conditions didn't arise elsewhere, remains an open question. We live on a planet actively reshaping itself, and we don't entirely know why it started. Fact 25. What is at the center of the Earth? At the center of the Earth sits a solid iron ball, roughly 750 miles across, about the size of the Moon, compressed into rigidity by pressures 5 million times greater than surface atmospheric pressure. Temperatures between 9,000 and 13,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than the surface of the Sun, and yet solid. We have never been there. The deepest hole ever drilled reached about 6 miles before heat and pressure stopped all progress. The center is nearly 4,000 miles down. Everything we know comes from seismology. Reading how earthquake waves bend and reflect as they pass through materials of different densities. And recently, those readings revealed something unexpected. Evidence of a distinct innermost inner core, a separate region at the very center with a different crystal structure, a core within a core, beneath every mountain, every ocean, every city, a heart we are only beginning to understand. Fact 26. Where did Earth's water come from? 2/3 of Earth's surface is covered in water, but Earth formed in a region of the early solar system too warm for water ice to exist. The rocky material that built our planet should have been largely dry. And yet, the leading hypothesis involves delivery from elsewhere. Asteroids and comets from the outer solar system carrying water inward during a period of heavy bombardment early in Earth's history. The isotopic signature of Earth's water matches most closely with a type of asteroid called carbonaceous chondrites. But the match isn't perfect. Some water may have been locked in minerals from the original rocky material. Some may have arrived with comets, though most known comets have isotopic ratios that differ from Earth's oceans. The full picture likely involves multiple sources in proportions we haven't determined. Every drop of water you have ever touched arrived here from somewhere else, carried across the solar system. by objects that no longer exist. Fact 27. Why do mass extinctions happen in cycles? Life on Earth has been nearly erased multiple times. 5 great mass extinctions are written into the fossil record. Each eliminated a significant fraction of all species. The worst, the end Permian event, 252 million years ago, killed perhaps 96% of all marine species. Life recovered, eventually, after millions of years. But here is the quietly unsettling observation. Some researchers have analyzed extinction timing over the last 500 million years and found a rhythm. An elevated extinction risk occurring roughly every 26 to 27 million years. If real, what could cause it? Proposed mechanisms include cyclical variations in Earth's position in the galaxy, periodic passages through regions of higher cosmic ray intensity, or distant disturbances sending comets raining toward the inner solar system. None confirmed. The periodicity itself remains controversial. Possibly a statistical artifact, possibly a real clock buried in catastrophe, ticking at a frequency no one has identified. Fact 28. What created the moon? Look up on a clear night and the moon is simply there, familiar, permanent, seeming. But the moon has a violent, improbable history. The leading explanation, the giant impact hypothesis, proposes that roughly 4.5 billion years ago, a Mars-sized object struck the early Earth at an angle. The collision vaporized much of both bodies, hurling an enormous cloud of debris into orbit. That debris coalesced into the moon. The model explains the moon's composition and its small iron core well, but recent precise measurements of moon rocks created a complication. The moon's composition is almost identical to Earth's, far more similar than the impact model easily predicts. Since the impacting body should have contributed significantly different material. Either the impactor happened to be nearly identical to early Earth, unlikely, or the collision was more complete than models suggest. The giant impact hypothesis remains our best explanation, not a settled answer, a best current guess. Fact 29. Why does Earth have exactly the right conditions for life? Earth sits at the right distance from the Sun for liquid water. It has a large moon stabilizing its axial tilt, plate tectonics regulating long-term temperature, a magnetic field protecting the surface, an atmosphere with the right composition and pressure. Each factor individually might be coincidence. Taken together, they form a picture so precisely suited to complex life that the question becomes uncomfortable. Is Earth rare? The rare Earth hypothesis argues the combination of factors required is so specific that Earth-like planets may be extraordinarily uncommon, perhaps unique. The counter-argument is the universe's sheer scale. Hundreds of billions of galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars. Even very low probability, multiplied sufficiently, produces certainty. Both arguments are mathematically coherent. Neither has been resolved by observation. A planet that seems made for you is either extraordinarily lucky or not unusual at all. And the difference between those two answers is one of the most important unsolved questions in science. Fact 30. What lies beneath the Antarctic ice? Antarctica is the least explored continent on Earth. Beneath its ice sheet, in places nearly 3 miles thick, lies a landscape hidden from sunlight for millions of years. Mountains taller than the Alps, valleys deeper than the Grand Canyon, and more than 400 subglacial lakes kept liquid by geothermal heat despite miles of ice above. The largest Lake Vostok is roughly the size of Lake Ontario and has been sealed from the surface for up to 25 million years. In 2012, scientists drilled through nearly 5 miles of ice and reached it. Initial analysis found evidence of microbial life. Bacteria adapted to extreme cold, darkness, and pressure. What else lives down there? Whether it has been isolated for millions of years. Whether the ecosystem is more complex than a few bacteria still being investigated in the dark, in the cold, alive, 30 mysteries now. A planet that froze and somehow thawed, water delivered from across the solar system. Life hiding beneath miles of ancient ice, in darkness that has lasted longer than our species has existed. The ground beneath you has a story longer than anything the mind easily holds, and it is still being written. Let's continue. Fact 31. Why does observation change reality? There is an experiment so strange that physicists have argued about its meaning for nearly a century. Fire electrons at a barrier with 2 narrow slits. Each electron doesn't pass through one slit or the other. It passes through both simultaneously, interfering with itself, producing a pattern only possible if it traveled as a wave through both openings at once. The electron exists in multiple states at the same time, but place a detector at the slits to observe which path it takes, and the wave behavior vanishes. The electron suddenly behaves like a particle. The interference pattern disappears. Observation changes the physical outcome, not because the detector disturbs the electron physically, but because observation forces reality to commit. Why? The math describes it perfectly. What it means, whether observation collapses something real, whether all outcomes occur in branching realities, divides physicists today as sharply as it did in 1927. Fact 32. What is time, really? You experience time constantly, the present moment, the remembered past, the anticipated future, the feeling of one moment following another, in an ordered, irreversible sequence. Time feels like the most fundamental feature of existence, and yet physics has remarkably little to say about what it actually is. Einstein showed time is not absolute. It flows at different rates depending on velocity and gravity. Move faster and time slows for you. Sit deeper in a gravitational field and time moves more slowly. These are not abstractions. GPS satellites must account for relativistic time differences to give accurate positions. But what time is made of, why it exists, whether it is fundamental or emergent from something deeper, entirely unknown. Some physicists believe at the deepest level of reality there is no time at all, only relationships between things. You are moving through something right now, and no one is entirely sure what that something is. Fact 33. Why does time only move forward? Almost all laws of physics work equally well in both directions of time. The equations governing gravity, electromagnetism, and quantum mechanics are largely time-symmetric. Run them forward or backward, they remain valid. A film of 2 billiard balls colliding looks physically plausible, whether played forward or in reverse. And yet time, in our experience, moves only forward. Eggs break and don't unbreak. Heat flows from warm to cool. Memories accumulate of the past, not the future. This one-way arrow appears to emerge from entropy, the tendency of systems to move from order toward disorder. There are vastly more disordered states than ordered ones. So any large system almost certainly moves toward disorder rather than the reverse. But why did the universe start in such an extraordinarily ordered state in the first place? That question reaches beyond thermodynamics into territory where physics currently has no answer. Fact 34. What is gravity really? Of the four fundamental forces, gravity is the one we feel most directly. It holds us to the ground. It keeps Earth orbiting the Sun. It governs the large-scale structure of the entire universe. It is also, by a significant margin, the least understood at a fundamental level. The other three forces have been successfully described by quantum field theory. Forces arising from the exchange of particles. Gravity has resisted this treatment for nearly a century. Every attempt to combine general relativity with quantum mechanics produces nonsensical infinities. The two theories are individually the most precisely tested in all of science, and they are fundamentally incompatible with each other. A quantum theory of gravity remains the central unsolved problem in theoretical physics. String theory, loop quantum gravity, proposed but unconfirmed. The force pressing you gently into wherever you're resting right now is the force we understand, least of all. Fact 35. Are there hidden dimensions? You move through three dimensions, left and right, forward and backward, up and down. Three axes that together define all of physical space as you experience it. But there is no particular reason, beyond observation, why reality must be limited to three. String theory, a leading candidate for a unified theory of physics, requires additional dimensions to be mathematically consistent. Depending on the version, 10 or 11 dimensions of space-time. The extra dimensions, in most formulations, are curled up at scales so small no experiment could detect them, smaller than an atomic nucleus. Other theories propose large extra dimensions that could in principle be found by experiments looking for deviations in gravity's behavior at very short distances. So far, no deviation found. You cannot feel a fourth spatial dimension. You cannot point in its direction. But the mathematics that best describes the universe may require one to be there, just beyond every sense you have. Fact 36. Why does quantum entanglement work faster than light? Take two particles and entangle them. Separate them across any distance. A room, a galaxy. Measure a property of one, and instantly the other particle's corresponding property is determined. Not after a delay, not with any signal traveling between them. Instantly, Einstein called this spooky action at a distance and believed it revealed an incompleteness in quantum mechanics, that hidden variables must explain the correlations without requiring instantaneous influence. Decades of experiments have ruled that out. The correlations are real, instantaneous regardless of distance, and cannot be explained by any local hidden variable theory. Confirmed definitively in loophole-free experiments in 2015. And yet it cannot send information faster than light. Causality is preserved, but something is connected across space in a way that feels impossible. Two particles separated by any distance. Still, in some sense, one thing. Fact Hestes 37. What happens at the smallest scale of reality? There is a length so small it may be where space itself runs out. The Planck length, approximately 0.00000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000 a number requiring 34 zeros after the decimal point. At this scale, the known laws of physics are expected to break down completely. Below it, the concepts of space and distance may cease to have meaning. Quantum fluctuations in space-time itself would be so violent that the smooth fabric described by general relativity would dissolve into something else entirely, something we have no confirmed theory to describe. Some physicists believe space-time at this scale is a kind of foam, constantly fluctuating, with tiny wormholes appearing and vanishing too briefly to measure. Others believe space is not continuous at all but discrete, made of irreducible units, like pixels that look smooth from a distance, but reveal a grid up close, a floor to the universe that no instrument may ever reach. Fact 38. Is mathematics discovered or invented? Mathematics is unreasonably effective at describing the physical world. Equations written for purely abstract reasons, with no connection to physical observation, repeatedly turn out to describe nature with extraordinary precision. Riemann geometry, developed as a mathematical exercise in the 19th century, became the foundation of general relativity decades later. Complex numbers, invented to solve equations with no real solutions, turned out essential to quantum mechanics. Why would abstract mathematics invented by human minds describe physical reality so precisely? If mathematics is invented, a human construction, its effectiveness is a profound and unexplained coincidence, perhaps the most baffling coincidence in intellectual history. If mathematics is discovered, if mathematical truths exist independently of human minds, then the universe is, in some deep sense, mathematical. Reality is not described by mathematics. It is mathematics. A number is either something you made or something you found. Fact 39. Why does the universe follow laws at all? One step beyond the previous mystery. Not whether mathematics is invented or discovered, but why the universe follows mathematical rules at all. Why is there pattern rather than chaos? Why can a human being, sitting on a small planet around an ordinary star, write equations that accurately predict the behavior of objects billions of light years away? There is no obvious reason the universe had to be this way. A universe of pure chaos, where the laws of physics varied randomly from place to place, where no prediction was ever reliable, where pattern never emerged, seems at least conceivable. Nothing in logic forbids it, and yet everywhere we look we find order, symmetry, mathematical structure so consistent. It suggests something profound about the relationship between mind and reality. A universe that follows rules when it didn't have to, and no one knows why it chose to. Fact 40. What is empty space made of? Between the stars, between atoms, between everything, there is space. And for a long time, the assumption was simple. Empty space is empty, nothing. Quantum mechanics disagrees. According to quantum field theory, empty space is filled with quantum fields that are never truly at rest. Even in their lowest energy state, they fluctuate. Virtual particle pairs constantly pop into existence and annihilate, too brief to detect directly, but real enough to produce measurable effects. The Casimir effect, a measurable force between two uncharged metal plates placed extremely close together in a vacuum, demonstrates this. The vacuum between the plates is not empty, and the imbalance creates a tiny but real measurable force. But when physicists calculate the energy density of this quantum vacuum, they get a number vastly larger than observed, larger by a factor described as the worst prediction in the history of physics. The emptiest place imaginable, full of something we don't understand. 40 mysteries now. Observation changes what is there. Time moves in only one direction, and no one knows why. Empty space is not empty, and the force holding you gently to the ground is the force we understand least of all. Reality is not what it appears. It is stranger, quieter, more interesting. Let's continue. Fact 41. How did life begin? Somewhere on the early Earth, roughly 4 billion years ago, chemistry became biology. A collection of molecules, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, crossed a threshold, and on the other side was something that could copy itself, something that could use energy from its environment, something that could, however slowly, change. We don't know where it happened. Candidates include warm tidal pools, deep-sea hydrothermal vents, or mineral surfaces that may have acted as molecular templates. We don't know which came first: proteins that do the work of cells, or RNA that carries the instructions. The chicken and egg problem runs very deep. What we know is that once life began, it never stopped. Every living thing on Earth today, every bacterium, every tree, every sleeping human, is part of a chain unbroken for 4 billion years. The origin of that chain remains one of the great unsolved problems of science. Fact 42. Why do we age? Every cell in your body carries a clock. At the ends of your chromosomes are structures called telomeres, protective caps, that shorten slightly each time a cell divides. When they become too short, the cell stops dividing and eventually dies, repeated across trillions of cells over decades. This is one fundamental mechanism of aging, but only one. Aging also involves accumulating DNA damage, declining cellular repair, buildup of misfolded proteins, and chronic low-level inflammation. Why these specific mechanisms, rather than others, is not fully explained. More provocatively, is aging inevitable? The naked mole rat shows almost no increase in mortality risk with age. Certain jellyfish appear to reverse their aging entirely under stress. The Greenland shark lives over 400 years. The clock is ticking. But no one has proven it cannot be reset. Fact 43. What is junk DNA doing? For decades, the vast majority of your DNA was called junk. The human genome contains roughly 3 billion base pairs. Only about 1.5% code for proteins, the molecules that do most cellular work. The other 98.5% appeared to be evolutionary debris, ancient viral sequences, repetitive stretches with no obvious function. Scientists called it junk DNA and largely set it aside. Then the ENCODE project changed the picture. An international consortium found that roughly 80% of the genome shows some form of biochemical activity. Much of the so-called junk is transcribed into RNA. It interacts with genes, regulating when and how they are expressed. It plays roles in how chromosomes fold in 3 dimensions. What exactly all of it does, whether the activity is functional or biochemical noise, remains deeply debated. Most of your DNA was called junk. Most of your DNA, it turns out, is doing something. We just haven't worked out what. Fact 44. How does one cell become a human? You began as one cell, a single fertilized egg, smaller than the period at the end of this sentence, containing complete instructions for building every structure in your body. 200 different cell types, 37 trillion cells total, a brain with 100 billion neurons. a heart that will beat roughly 3 billion times in a lifetime, all from one cell. Cells divide, migrate, differentiate, turning on specific subsets of genes to become liver cells, neurons, muscle fibers. They read chemical signals, telling them where they are in the developing body and adjust accordingly. But how a cell knows where it is, how errors get corrected, how the system reliably produces the same basic body plan across billions of individuals, each slightly different but all recognizably human, remains incompletely understood. One cell that somehow already knows what it will become. Fact 45. Why do some animals live for centuries? A mayfly lives for a single day. A Greenland shark lives roughly 400 years, reaching sexual maturity around 150. The ocean quahog clam has been recorded at 507 years old. A species of jellyfish may be biologically immortal, capable of reverting to its juvenile state when stressed. Why does lifespan vary so enormously? The evolutionary answer is that lifespan is calibrated to reproductive strategy. Species reproducing quickly have little pressure to maintain their bodies long. But this predicts general patterns, not specific lifespans. Why 400 years for the Greenland shark specifically? Why does the naked mole rat, which by body size should live perhaps 6 years, regularly exceed 30? The molecular mechanisms underlying extreme longevity are being studied intensively. A unified theory of why different species age at such different rates does not yet exist. A mayfly and a Greenland shark, same basic cellular machinery. One gets a day, the other gets 4 centuries. Fact 46. Is a virus alive? A virus occupies an uncomfortable position at the boundary of life. It has genetic material, it evolves, it reproduces in enormous numbers, hijacking cellular machinery to do so. In many ways, it behaves like a living thing, but a virus cannot reproduce on its own. It has no metabolism. Outside a host cell, it is inert, a chemical structure no more alive than a crystal. It cannot respond to its environment independently, cannot grow, cannot sustain itself. By the standard definitions of life, metabolism, homeostasis, growth, reproduction, a virus qualifies on some counts and fails others. The debate is not merely semantic. It touches on what life actually is. Whether life is a binary state or a continuum, whether the boundary between chemistry and biology is a sharp line or a gradual transition. A virus is either the simplest form of life or the most complex form of chemistry. No one has settled which. Fact 47. Why does the immune system attack itself? Your immune system distinguishes self from non-self with extraordinary precision, recognizing the body's own cells and leaving them alone while attacking bacteria, viruses, and cancer cells. It learns, adapts, remembers, and sometimes, for reasons not fully understood, it makes a catastrophic error. In autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, and more than 80 others, the immune system turns against the body's own tissues. The same precision that makes it effective becomes the mechanism of its own destructiveness. Why? Genetics plays a role. Environmental triggers, infections, gut microbiome composition, early childhood exposures appear to influence risk. The hygiene hypothesis suggests immune systems deprived of early microbial challenges may be more prone to misdirection. But the precise molecular switch that tips a functioning immune system into attacking itself is not yet understood for most autoimmune diseases. A system designed to protect turned against the thing it was built to defend. Fact causes cancer. Cancer is not one disease. It is a category, a failure mode occurring in almost any tissue through many different molecular pathways, producing tumors so different that treating one type often has nothing to do with treating another. At its most fundamental level, cancer is a disease of information. DNA damage accumulates in a cell. Most is repaired, but occasionally a mutation affects genes controlling cell division. The genes that tell a cell when to grow and when to stop. A cell that loses the ability to stop dividing, that can survive in hostile environments, that has lost the signals triggering its own death. That is a cancer cell. The basic mechanism is understood: why certain mutations in certain cells in certain individuals lead to cancer while others do not. Why some cancers evolve around therapies, developing resistance with almost purposeful intelligence, remains incompletely explained. Cancer has existed as long as life has, and it continues to surprise us. Fact 49. Why are some people left-handed? Roughly 10% of humans are left-handed. This has been true across cultures and throughout recorded history. Cave paintings from tens of thousands of years ago show the same roughly 9-to-1 ratio, one of the most consistent behavioral asymmetries in our species, and its cause is not understood. Handedness has a genetic component. It runs in families, but no single gene reliably predicts it. Identical twins sharing identical DNA differ in handedness roughly 20% of the time, suggesting environment or random developmental variation also plays a role. The brain is asymmetric. The left hemisphere typically controls language and the right hand. Left-handed people show more variable patterns, sometimes mirrored, sometimes mixed. But why the asymmetry exists at all, and why roughly 1 in 10 people develop the opposite pattern, is not explained. 1 in 10, across all of human history. A quiet asymmetry with no settled explanation. Fact 50. How does a caterpillar become a butterfly? Inside a chrysalis, something almost impossible is happening. A caterpillar, a crawling, leaf-eating creature, is dissolving itself. Not metaphorically, literally. Using enzymes it produces itself, the caterpillar breaks down most of its own tissues into a cellular soup. What remains are clusters of cells called imaginal discs, present all along, dormant, waiting. From these, an entirely different body assembles itself. Wings, compound eyes, a completely reorganized nervous system. The butterfly that emerges shares DNA with the caterpillar that dissolved, but almost nothing else. How the imaginal discs survive the dissolution of everything around them. How they carry the instructions to build a butterfly without being destroyed. How the whole process is orchestrated from what was, briefly, essentially undifferentiated soup, not fully explained. Research has shown some memories formed by the caterpillar persist in the butterfly, a creature that takes itself completely apart and somehow, in some small way, remains itself. 50 mysteries we are halfway through, from the first spark of life to the caterpillar that dissolves and dreams itself into wings. Life is as mysterious as the universe that produced it, perhaps more so, because life is the part of the universe that wonders about itself. Take a breath and let's continue. Fact 51. What lives in the deepest parts of the ocean? The deepest point on Earth is the Challenger Deep, nearly 7 miles beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean. At that depth, Pressure is over 1,000 times greater than at the surface. No sunlight has ever reached it. Temperature hovers just above freezing. By every measure, it should be lifeless. And yet, researchers have found life there. Bacteria living in the sediment. Small crustaceans called amphipods, some nearly a foot long, scavenging in the darkness. Sea cucumbers moving slowly across the ocean floor. Even fish, the Hadal snailfish, have been filmed at depths that would crush an unprotected human instantly. How these creatures survive pressures that would destroy most cellular machinery. How they find food in a place where almost nothing sinks from above. Incompletely understood. The deepest place on Earth, and something is living there. Fact 52. Why do deep-sea creatures glow? In the deep ocean, there is no sunlight. Below roughly 3,300 feet, permanent darkness begins. And yet, in that darkness, things glow. Bioluminescence, the production of light by living organisms, is extraordinarily common in the deep sea. Estimates suggest that up to 76% of deep-sea creatures produce their own light. Jellyfish that pulse with blue-green radiance. Anglerfish dangling glowing lures to attract prey. Squid that flash patterns of light across their bodies in fractions of a second. Why so many creatures independently evolved this ability through dozens of separate evolutionary pathways is not fully understood. Light is used for hunting, for defense, for communication, for camouflage against the faint light from above. But the precise evolutionary pressures that made bioluminescence so overwhelmingly common in one environment remain an open question, an ocean full of living lights. In the place where light was never supposed to exist. Fact T53. What was the bloop? In 1997, underwater microphones operated by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration recorded something unusual. A sound. Extraordinarily loud. Loud enough to be detected by sensors nearly 3,000 miles apart. Low frequency. Rising in pitch. Lasting roughly 1 minute. Scientists called it the bloop. Its profile resembled the sounds produced by living creatures, but was several times louder than the loudest known biological sound, the blue whale's call. Nothing known to science could produce a sound that powerful from a biological source. For over a decade, the bloop remained unexplained. In 2012, NOAA scientists concluded it was most likely the sound of a large icequake, a fracturing Antarctic ice shelf, producing low-frequency acoustic signatures that travel enormous distances underwater. Most researchers accept this explanation. The ocean floor near Antarctica holds its secrets carefully. Something made that sound. The iceberg explanation is the best we have. Fact 54. How do creatures survive crushing depths? At the bottom of the ocean, the pressure would crush a human body instantly, and yet life thrives there. Deep-sea creatures have evolved remarkable adaptations to survive conditions that would be instantly lethal at the surface. Their cell membranes contain unusual fatty acids that remain flexible under extreme pressure, where ordinary membranes would stiffen and fail. Their proteins have evolved structures that function correctly at pressures that would denature and destroy surface proteins entirely. Some deep-sea fish have no swim bladder, the gas-filled organ that surface fish use for buoyancy, because gas-filled spaces collapse under pressure. Instead, they achieve neutral buoyancy through fat deposits and reduced skeletal density. But how the biochemistry of life adapts to pressure at the molecular level The precise mechanisms by which deep-sea enzymes maintain function where surface enzymes cannot remains an active area of research with many unanswered questions. Life finds a way in places we never expected to look. Fact 55. Why do whales beach themselves? Every year, whales and dolphins strand themselves on beaches around the world, sometimes alone, sometimes in groups of hundreds, entire pods following a single individual onto shore, remaining there even when humans attempt to guide them back. For an animal perfectly engineered for the ocean, beaching is death, and yet it happens repeatedly across every ocean. Why? Several explanations have been proposed. Military sonar, particularly mid-frequency active sonar used by naval vessels, has been linked to mass strandings, possibly by disorienting or panicking animals that rely on sound for navigation. Parasitic infections affecting the brain's navigation centers have been found in some stranded individuals. Geomagnetic anomalies, distortions in Earth's magnetic field, may interfere with the magnetic navigation some cetaceans appear to use. No single explanation accounts for all strandings. The behavior remains one of the most distressing and least understood phenomena in marine biology. An animal built for the sea, choosing somehow to leave it. Fact 56. What are the ocean's invisible waves? The ocean has waves you can see, and waves you cannot. Internal waves. Oscillations occurring not at the ocean's surface but deep within it, at boundaries between water layers of different temperatures and densities, can reach heights of hundreds of feet and stretch for hundreds of miles. They move slowly and visibly through the interior of the ocean. From above, the sea surface appears calm. Below, enormous masses of water are rising and falling. These internal waves influence deep-sea currents, affect the distribution of nutrients, impact submarine navigation, and play a role in mixing the ocean's layers. A process critical to climate regulation. But the precise mechanisms by which internal waves form, propagate, break, and transfer energy through the ocean system are not fully understood. The largest waves on Earth, invisible from the surface, moving through the dark below you right now. Fact 57. How do sea turtles find their way home? A loggerhead sea turtle hatches on a beach in Florida. It enters the ocean, joins the North Atlantic gyre, and spends years, sometimes decades, circling thousands of miles of open ocean. Then, when ready to reproduce, it returns, not just to Florida, not just to the same beach, often to within a few hundred feet of the exact spot where it hatched, using no map, no landmarks visible from the open ocean, no GPS. Sea turtles are known to navigate using Earth's magnetic field, sensing both the intensity and inclination of the field, which vary across the planet in ways that create a kind of magnetic map. Each beach has a unique magnetic signature. The turtle imprints on that signature at birth and uses it to find its way back decades later. How the magnetic sense works at the cellular level, what biological structure actually detects the field, has not been definitively identified. A turtle, thousands of miles, decades later, home. Fact 58. What lives at hydrothermal vents? In 1977, scientists descending in a submersible to the ocean floor near the Galapagos Islands found something that shouldn't exist. At nearly 1.5 miles deep, in complete darkness, on a seafloor where temperatures near the vents reached over 700 degrees Fahrenheit, life, abundant, thriving, entirely independent of sunlight. Giant tube worms over 6 feet long, clams the size of dinner plates, white crabs, dense communities of organisms building entire ecosystems around chemical energy rising from cracks in the ocean floor, a process called chemosynthesis. Before 1977, life was thought to depend ultimately on sunlight. Photosynthesis at the base of every food chain. These communities rewrote that assumption entirely. How the organisms at vents survive temperatures that would kill most life, how they tolerate toxic sulfur compounds, remains an active area of research. Life, it turns out, doesn't need the sun. It just needs chemistry. Fact 59. Why does the ocean have dead zones? In hundreds of locations across the world's oceans, there is almost no oxygen. These are dead zones, hypoxic regions where oxygen levels drop so low that most marine life cannot survive. Fish flee if they can. Those that cannot die. The seafloor beneath dead zones is often covered in the remains of creatures that suffocated. The largest dead zone in the United States sits in the Gulf of Mexico, growing each summer to roughly the size of New Jersey. The primary cause is well understood. Nutrient runoff, particularly nitrogen and phosphorus from agricultural fertilizers, washes into coastal waters. This triggers explosive growth of algae. When the algae die and decompose, bacteria consume the oxygen faster than it can be replenished. But why some regions recover and others don't? What determines the boundaries of a dead zone? Whether deep ocean dead zones can develop independently of human activity. Incompletely understood, parts of the ocean slowly going silent. Fact 60. What is the underwater waterfall near Mauritius? From the air near the island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean, the seafloor appears to drop away in a cascading rush. A waterfall, seemingly thousands of feet deep, pouring into an abyss. It is an optical illusion. The surface of the ocean is flat, but what creates it is real and genuinely unusual. Sand and silt from the shallow waters around Mauritius are carried by ocean currents toward a steep underwater cliff and cascade down its face in a continuous slow avalanche. Seen from above, the movement of sediment in clear, shallow water against the darkness of deep water below creates a convincing illusion of a waterfall. What makes this location particularly striking? The precise underwater topography, the specific current patterns, the clarity of water that makes the illusion so dramatic is not fully explained. Not everything in the ocean that looks impossible is impossible. Some of it is just. The ocean being extraordinary, 60 mysteries now, creatures glowing in permanent darkness, invisible waves hundreds of feet tall, moving through the deep. A turtle finding its way home across thousands of miles using a sense we cannot fully explain. The ocean covers most of this planet, and most of it remains unknown. Pause 3J. Let's continue. Fact 61. Do plants feel pain? When a caterpillar begins eating a tomato plant, something happens within minutes. The plant releases chemical signals, volatile compounds that travel through the air to neighboring plants, triggering them to produce defensive chemicals before any caterpillar has touched them. The damaged plant also sends signals through its own tissues, increasing production of compounds that make its leaves harder to digest. This is not random chemistry. It is specific, rapid, and responsive. Do plants feel pain in any meaningful sense? Almost certainly not in the way animals do. They have no nervous system, no brain, no centralized processings. but they detect damage. They respond to it. They communicate about it. Whether this constitutes something like experience, however primitive, however alien to our own, is a question biology cannot yet answer. Something is happening inside a plant when it is hurt. We just don't have the vocabulary for what that something is. Fact 62. How do trees talk to each other? Beneath a forest floor, there is a network. Fungal threads, mycelium, extend through the soil in dense, branching webs, connecting the root systems of trees across vast areas. Through these connections, trees exchange carbon, nitrogen, water, and chemical signals in quantities measurable by modern instruments. Larger, older trees, sometimes called mother trees, appear to send disproportionate amounts of carbon to younger seedlings nearby, particularly to their own offspring. Stressed trees send chemical warning signals through the network that neighboring trees respond to, increasing their own defenses. Ecologist Suzanne Simard, who spent decades documenting this, describes the forest as a cooperative system rather than a purely competitive one. But whether these exchanges constitute communication in any meaningful sense, whether there is intention, awareness, or simply chemistry, remains genuinely debated. A forest is not a collection of individual trees. It may be something closer to a single, slow conversation. Fact 63. Why do some plants count? The Venus flytrap has a problem. Triggering its trap is metabolically expensive. Closing on a raindrop or a piece of wind-blown debris wastes energy that takes time to recover. So the plant evolved a solution. It counts. Touch one trigger hair inside the trap, and nothing happens. Touch a second hair within about 20 seconds, and the trap snaps shut. The plant has registered 2 separate stimuli in a defined time window and responded accordingly. More remarkably, if the prey continues to struggle, the trap counts further touches. At 5, it begins secreting digestive enzymes. At additional stimuli, it increases enzyme production. The number of touches calibrates the digestive response to the size and resistance of the prey. How a plant with no neurons, no brain, no centralized processing, counts, remembers, and adjusts its behavior across time is not fully understood. Fact 64. How does a seed know which ways is up? Plant a seed upside down in complete darkness. The root will still grow downward. The shoot will still grow upward. How? Plants detect gravity through a process called gravitropism. Specialized cells contain small starch-filled bodies called statoliths that settle toward the bottom of the cell under gravity, like tiny internal plumb bobs. The position of these statoliths triggers chemical signals that tell the plant which direction is down, but the complete picture is more complex. The signaling pathway from statolith position to directional growth involves multiple hormones, particularly auxin, redistributing asymmetrically through the plant tissue in response to gravitational cues. How the mechanical signal, statoliths settling, is converted into the biochemical cascade that produces directional growth at a cellular level remains incompletely understood. A seed in absolute darkness, finding its way with no eyes, no brain, no light, just gravity and chemistry and something that works. Fact 65. What is the largest living organism on Earth? It is not a blue whale. It is not a giant sequoia. It is a fungus. In the Malheur National Forest in eastern Oregon, a single organism of Armillaria, Ostoii honey fungus, spreads across approximately 385 acres of forest floor. Its age is estimated between 2,000 and 8,000 years. Its weight, including underground mycelial networks, may exceed 35,000 tons. From the surface, it is nearly invisible. Occasional clusters of small honey-colored mushrooms emerging in autumn are its only visible expression. Everything else is underground, a vast network of fungal threads spreading slowly through the soil and the roots of trees. How a single organism maintains biological coordination across that distance, how it functions as one entity rather than many, is not fully understood. The largest living thing on Earth, almost entirely invisible. Patient beyond imagination. Fact 66. Why do some fungi glow in the dark? In forests across Brazil, Japan, and other parts of the world, certain mushrooms emit a faint, steady green light visible in complete darkness. Bioluminescent fungi, roughly 100 species are known, glow continuously, not in flashes, producing cold light through a chemical reaction involving a compound called luciferin and an enzyme called luciferase. But why? Unlike deep-sea bioluminescence, which serves clear purposes, hunting, defense, communication, the function of fungal bioluminescence is not well understood. One hypothesis suggests the light attracts insects that disperse spores, functioning as a kind of advertisement in the dark. Studies have found some evidence that insects are indeed attracted to glowing fungi at night, but not all glowing fungi produce spores at the same time they glow. The timing doesn't always match. A mushroom glowing softly in a dark forest, for reasons science hasn't fully settled. How do slime molds solve mazes? A slime mold is not a plant, not an animal, not a fungus. It is a single-celled organism, or sometimes a collective of single-celled organisms that merge into one mass, that creeps slowly across surfaces, engulfing food as it goes. It has no brain, no nervous system, no neurons of any kind, and it can solve a maze. In laboratory experiments, slime molds placed at one entrance of a maze with food at the exit will explore available paths simultaneously, then withdraw from dead ends, concentrating their mass along the shortest efficient route to the food. More strikingly, when researchers arranged food sources in the pattern of Tokyo's major population centers, the slime mold's network of connections closely resembled the actual Tokyo rail system, which took engineers decades to optimize. How a single-celled organism with no brain achieves this is genuinely unknown. Fact 68. Why do flowers smell different to bees? A flower does not smell the same to a bee as it does to you. Bees perceive ultraviolet light invisible to human eyes. Many flowers have ultraviolet patterns, invisible to us, that serve as landing guides directing pollinators toward nectar. Similarly, the chemical compounds that produce a flower's scent interact differently with the olfactory receptors of different species. What humans smell as a single fragrance may be perceived by a bee as a complex blend of distinct chemical signals, each carrying specific information. This flower has nectar. This flower has already been visited. This flower produces pollen. How flowers evolved scent profiles precisely tuned to the sensory systems of their preferred pollinators. The co-evolutionary relationship between plant chemistry and insect neuroscience is understood in broad outline but not in detail. A garden smells one way to you, an entirely different way to everything else living in it. Fact 69. What do plants do at night? Plants are not simply resting at night. Many flowering plants undergo nyctinasty, a daily rhythmic movement in which leaves and flowers open during the day and close at night. Tulips, oxalis, and many legumes fold their leaves inward after dark, reopening at dawn. Dandelions close their flowers at night and reopen them in the morning. Charles Darwin documented this behavior extensively, calling it the sleep of plants. Why it happens is not fully understood. Proposed functions include protection from cold, conservation of moisture, prevention of pollen loss from rain or dew, and protection from nighttime insects that are inefficient pollinators. More recently, research has found that plants actively regulate their internal chemistry at night, managing sugar transport, adjusting hormone levels, processing the day's photosynthesis output. A plant in darkness is not idle. It is doing something. What exactly is still being worked out. Fact 70. How does mistletoe survive for decades without killing its host? Mistletoe is a parasite. It drives its specialized roots, haustoria, into the branches of host trees, tapping directly into their water and nutrient supply. It takes what it needs without contributing photosynthate in return, drawing from the tree's resources year after year. By all logic, a parasite that takes without giving should eventually kill its host, eliminating its own food supply. And some mistletoe infestations do eventually weaken and kill heavily parasitized trees. But in many cases, mistletoe and host coexist for decades. The tree continues to grow. The mistletoe continues to feed. A kind of unstable equilibrium persists. How mistletoe calibrates its extraction to stay below the threshold that would kill the host. Whether this reflects evolved restraint or simply variable host tolerance is not fully understood. A parasite that has learned, somehow, not to finish what it started. Still feeding. After all these years, 70 mysteries now, a forest that is one slow conversation. A single-celled organism solving mazes with no brain. A seed finding its way in absolute darkness. A fungus spreading across thousands of acres. Patient and invisible, older than most civilizations. The natural world around you is stranger than it appears and quieter, and far more alive. Let's continue. Fact 71. How do monarch butterflies find a place they've never been? Every autumn, monarch butterflies across North America undertake one of the most remarkable migrations on Earth. From as far north as Canada, they fly up to 30 miles to overwintering sites in the mountains of central Mexico. Forests they have never visited, in a location no individual butterfly has ever seen. The monarchs making the journey are the great-grandchildren of those that left Mexico the previous spring. No individual lives long enough to make the round trip. The knowledge of where to go is not learned. It is inherited. Monarchs navigate using a time-compensated sun compass, integrating the position of the sun with an internal circadian clock to maintain a consistent southwesterly direction. They also appear to use Earth's magnetic field as a backup. How these two systems integrate, how the destination is encoded in genes rather than memory, not fully understood. Fact 72. Why do cats purr? Cats purr when content, but they also purr when injured, giving birth, or dying. Cats purr at the vet during painful procedures. Feral cats purr. Big cats closely related to domestic cats purr. Purring clearly serves more than one function, and those functions are not fully understood. The mechanism is known. Rapid, rhythmic activation of the laryngeal muscles. causes the glottis to dilate and constrict with each breath, producing the characteristic vibration at frequencies between 25 and 150 hertz. What is less understood is why. Research has suggested that vibrations in the 25-50 hertz range promote bone density and accelerate healing in mammals. Some veterinarians have proposed that cats purr partly as a self-soothing, self-healing mechanism, vibrating their own bodies into recovery. Whether purring directed at humans serves as communicative function, a deliberate signal, also remains debated. A sound so familiar, still not fully explained. Fact 73. How do dogs know when you're coming home? Biologist Rupert Sheldrake documented a phenomenon that many dog owners report, but science has struggled to explain. Dogs that appear to anticipate their owner's return, going to the door, becoming alert, displaying behavior consistent with expectation, sometimes do so at the moment the owner decides to return home, regardless of time of day or regularity of schedule. Sheldrake filmed one dog, a terrier named JT, over hundreds of trials, and found statistically significant anticipatory behavior that did not correlate with routine, sound, or other conventional explanations. Skeptics have proposed that dogs read subtle cues, changes in scent carried on the wind, sounds at the edge of hearing, learned associations with invisible patterns. The controlled studies produce conflicting results. Whether dogs possess a sense that science hasn't yet characterized, or whether conventional explanations simply haven't been tested thoroughly enough, remains genuinely unresolved. Fact 74. Why do elephants mourn their dead? When an elephant dies, something extraordinary sometimes follows. Other elephants in the group return to the body. They touch it repeatedly with their trunks, the most sensitive part of their anatomy. They stand near it in silence for hours. They sometimes cover it with branches and soil. They return to the location of death months or years later, touching the bones of the deceased with what researchers have described as apparent recognition. Elephants have been observed doing this with the remains of elephants they were not closely related to. They respond differently to elephant bones than to the bones of other species. Whether elephants experience grief in any way analogous to human grief, whether there is subjective suffering, a sense of loss, awareness of mortality, cannot be determined from behavior alone. What is clear is that elephants treat their dead differently from everything else in their environment, with something that looks, from the outside, remarkably like care. Fact 75. How do birds navigate across continents? A bar-tailed godwit, a shorebird weighing less than a pound, flies non-stop from Alaska to New Zealand, over 7,000 miles, across the open Pacific, without landing, without eating, without drinking, for up to 9 days of continuous flight. How? Birds navigate using multiple overlapping systems simultaneously. The position of the sun, star patterns at night, Earth's magnetic field, infrasound from distant landmarks, smell and visual landmarks where available. These systems are redundant, each capable of compensating when others are unavailable. The magnetic sense is particularly poorly understood. Evidence suggests birds detect magnetic field direction using cryptochrome proteins in their eyes, quantum mechanical effects that may allow them to literally see the magnetic field as a visual overlay. How quantum effects in a protein produce navigational information in a brain is one of the most fascinating open questions in biology. a bird navigating quantum mechanics. Across an ocean. Fact 76. Why does an octopus have 9 brains? An octopus has 1 central brain and 8 additional neural clusters, 1 in each arm. Each arm can act semi-independently, processing sensory feed and executing complex movements without consulting the central brain. An arm severed from an octopus will continue to respond to stimuli and attempt to pass food toward where the mouth used to be for up to an hour after separation. This distributed intelligence raises questions that neuroscience is only beginning to approach. What is the experience of having 9 semi-independent processing centers? Does the octopus have a unified sense of self or something more fragmented, more distributed? Octopuses also have 3 hearts, blue copper-based blood, and can change both color and texture of their skin in milliseconds despite being colorblind. How the central brain coordinates with 8 semi-autonomous arms. What the inner experience of an octopus is like. Genuinely unknown, perhaps genuinely unknowable. Fact 77. How does a tardigrade survive in space? A tardigrade is an 8-legged microscopic animal, roughly half a millimeter long, found in moss, soil, and ocean sediment across every continent including Antarctica. It is also, as far as we know, the most resilient animal on Earth. When conditions become hostile, extreme heat, extreme cold, desiccation, radiation, vacuum, a tardigrade enters a state called cryptobiosis. It retracts its legs, expels nearly all water from its body, reduces its metabolism to less than 0.01% of normal, and becomes essentially inert. In this state, it can survive temperatures from near absolute zero to over 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Pressures 6 times greater than the deepest ocean. Radiation doses hundreds of times lethal to humans, and the vacuum of space. How tardigrade cells survive conditions that destroy proteins, rupture cell membranes, and shatter DNA in every other known organism is not fully understood. A creature smaller than a grain of sand, surviving where nothing should. Fact 78. Why don't hibernating animals lose muscle? When a human lies immobile for weeks, muscle wasting begins within days. Prolonged inactivity causes skeletal muscle to atrophy rapidly. A serious medical problem for bedridden patients, astronauts in microgravity, and anyone immobilized for extended periods. Bears hibernate for up to 7 months. Their body temperature drops. Heart rate falls from 55 beats per minute to as few as 8. And they neither eat, drink, urinate, nor defecate for the entire period. And they emerge in spring with negligible muscle loss. How bears suppress muscle atrophy during months of complete inactivity, while humans begin losing muscle within days, is not fully understood. Research has identified certain proteins and metabolic pathways that appear active in hibernating bears and absent or reduced in humans. If those mechanisms could be replicated in humans, the implications would be significant for medicine, for long-duration spaceflight, for the treatment of muscle-wasting diseases. A bear, asleep for 7 months, waking up strong. Fact 79. How does a crow remember your face? Crows recognize individual human faces. This was demonstrated in a series of experiments at the University of Washington, where researchers wearing specific masks while trapping and banding crows found that the birds subsequently scolded, dive-bombed, and avoided those specific masked individuals while ignoring people wearing different masks for years afterward. the recognition persisted. It was taught to offspring and to other flock members who had never encountered the original masked researchers. Crows have a brain region analogous to the human face recognition areas of the cortex, despite having a brain architecture entirely different from mammals. They achieve face recognition through convergent evolution, arriving at similar cognitive solutions through completely different neural structures. How a brain so different from ours produces cognitive abilities so similar to ours, including the capacity for grudges that outlast the lifespan of the original grievance, is not fully understood. A crow watching, remembering. Fact 80. Why do dolphins sleep with half their brain? Dolphins cannot breathe unconsciously. Unlike humans, who breathe automatically during sleep, dolphins must consciously decide to surface and breathe. A dolphin that fell fully unconscious would drown. Evolution's solution is unihemispheric slow-wave sleep, the ability to sleep with one hemisphere of the brain while the other remains awake and functional. The sleeping half rests. The waking half controls breathing, monitors the environment, and maintains basic movement. The eye connected to the sleeping hemisphere closes. The eye connected to the waking hemisphere stays open. Dolphins sleep while swimming, while watching, while breathing deliberately. How the brain coordinates this split, how information is managed between a sleeping hemisphere and a waking one, how the transition between hemispheres occurs, whether dolphins experience anything like dreaming, is not fully understood. Half asleep, half awake. Right now, somewhere in the ocean, a dolphin is doing exactly this. 80 mysteries now. A butterfly navigating by inherited memory to a place it has never been. A crow holding a grudge across years. A dolphin sleeping with half its brain, while the other half watches the dark water. The animals sharing this planet with us are stranger and more remarkable than we usually remember. Let's go a little deeper. Fact 81. What is consciousness? You are aware right now. Aware of these words, aware of the darkness around you. Aware, perhaps, of your own breathing slowing. Your thoughts beginning to soften at their edges. That awareness, the fact that there is something it is like to be you in this moment, having this experience, is called consciousness. And despite a century of neuroscience, despite everything we know about neurons and synapses and brain regions and chemistry, no one knows what it is. We know which brain regions are active during conscious experience. We can measure the electrical signatures of wakefulness and sleep. We can disrupt consciousness with anesthesia and restore it. But why any of this physical activity produces subjective experience? Why there is something it feels like to be a brain, rather than simply a brain processing information in the dark, is called the hard problem of consciousness, and it remains completely unsolved. Fact 82. Why do we dream? Every night, your brain stages an elaborate production, vivid scenes, people you know and people you've never met, narratives that feel urgent and real until the moment you wake, emotions, sometimes joy, sometimes terror, sometimes a feeling with no name, experienced as fully as anything in waking life. Why? Several theories exist. Threat simulation theory suggests dreaming evolved as a safe rehearsal space for dangerous scenarios. Memory consolidation theory proposes dreams help process and integrate the day's experiences into long-term memory. Emotional regulation theory suggests dreams allow the brain to work through difficult emotions in a context removed from their real-world triggers. Each has supporting evidence. None fully explains the richness, the strangeness, or the narrative complexity of dreams. Why the dreaming brain generates coherent stories, complete with characters, settings, and emotional arcs from random neural activity, is not understood. Fact 83. How does anesthesia work? General anesthesia does something extraordinary. It takes a conscious human being, aware, thinking, experiencing, and within seconds produces a state indistinguishable from unconsciousness. No pain, no memory, no experience of time passing. Then, with equal reliability, it reverses. Anesthesiologists administer it millions of times per year. It is one of medicine's most routinely used interventions. And how it works, at a fundamental level, is not fully understood. Anesthetic agents interact with multiple receptor systems in the brain, disrupting communication between neurons, altering the thalamus's role in relaying sensory information, interfering with the neural correlates of consciousness in ways that can be measured, but not fully explained. What they cannot explain is why disrupting these particular systems produces the complete abolition of experience, rather than simply impairing it. The same question that makes consciousness hard to explain makes anesthesia hard to explain too. We know how to turn experience off. We don't know what we're turning off. Fact 84. What is déjà vu? You walk into a room you have never entered, and you are absolutely certain you have been here before. Not vaguely familiar, certain. The feeling is so strong it seems impossible that this moment hasn't happened before. And then, within seconds, it fades, and you are left with the memory of a feeling that had no origin. This is déjà vu, experienced by roughly 2/3 of people. Usually briefly, usually in young adulthood, usually during states of mild fatigue or stress. The leading neurological explanation involves a misfiring of memory systems. Specifically, a momentary activation of familiarity signals in the brain without corresponding retrieval of actual memories. The brain registers recognition without being able to locate what is being recognized. But why this misfiring occurs, what triggers it, why it produces such an overwhelming subjective certainty rather than mild familiarity, not fully understood. A memory of something that never happened, feeling more real than the room you're actually standing in. Fact 85. Why do near-death experiences feel so similar? People who are resuscitated after cardiac arrest sometimes report experiences of remarkable consistency. A feeling of leaving the body, moving through darkness toward light, encountering deceased relatives, a life review, memories playing rapidly in sequence, a profound sense of peace, and in many cases, a fundamental change in how they approach death and life afterward. These reports come from people across cultures, religions, and belief systems, from people with no prior expectation of such experience, from people who were clinically dead, no measurable brain activity during the event. Several neurological explanations have been proposed. Hypoxia-induced hallucinations, surges of neural activity at the moment of cardiac arrest, REM intrusion into near unconscious states. But none fully accounts for the consistency of the experiences across vastly different individuals. What happens to consciousness at the threshold of death remains one of the most profound unanswered questions in neuroscience. Fact 86. Why do we forget? Memory feels like storage. Events recorded, filed, retrievable. But memory is not a filing cabinet. It is a reconstruction. Each time you remember something, you are rebuilding it from fragments, influenced by everything you have experienced since. And most of what happens to you, you forget entirely. Why? Forgetting was long assumed to be passive, memories simply fading over time through disuse. But research increasingly suggests forgetting is active. The brain deliberately erasing certain memories, using specific molecular mechanisms to degrade the synaptic connections that store them. Why the brain would actively erase memories is not fully understood. Leading hypotheses suggest forgetting reduces interference, allowing new information to be stored without confusion from outdated versions. It may also protect mental health, allowing traumatic memories to fade. But why some memories persist for a lifetime while others vanish within hours? Using what appears to be the same neural machinery is not explained. Fact 87. Why do some people hear colors? For most people, senses are separate, sound is heard, color is seen. The two do not interact, but roughly 4% of people experience synesthesia, a neurological phenomenon in which stimulation of one sense automatically and involuntarily triggers an experience in another. The most common form is chromesthesia, hearing sounds that trigger vivid, consistent color experiences. A specific musical note produces a specific color every time, reliably for years. The color is not imagined or chosen. It simply appears, as automatic as flinching from a sudden noise. Synesthesia runs in families, suggesting a genetic basis. Brain imaging shows activation in visual processing areas during auditory stimulation in synesthetes, suggesting genuine cross-activation of sensory regions. But why the neural wiring produces these specific cross-connections? Why a C-sharp is blue for one person and red for another is not understood. A world of additional experience, running quietly alongside the one most people inhabit. Fact 88. Why do humans feel stand at the edge of the Grand Canyon, look up at a sky full of stars, hear a piece of music that opens something in your chest you didn't know was closed? Something happens, something that researchers call awe, a specific emotional state triggered by encountering something vast, something that challenges existing mental frameworks, something that makes the self feel small in a way that is, paradoxically, often described as deeply pleasurable. A reduces activity in the default mode network, the brain region associated with self-referential thought, rumination, anxiety. It increases feelings of connection to others. It shifts time perception, making moments feel longer. It has been shown to reduce inflammatory markers in the blood. Why the human brain evolved a specific response to vastness. Why perceiving something larger than the self produces pleasure rather than threat is not fully understood. You are feeling something like it right now. Fact 89. What is the placebo effect doing in the body? A patient is given a sugar pill and told it is a powerful painkiller. Their pain decreases, measurably, objectively. Brain scans show activation of the same neural pathways activated by actual opioid medications. The body releases endorphins. Inflammation markers drop. The placebo effect is not imagination. It is real, measurable, physiological change produced by belief. More strangely, in some studies, patients told explicitly that they are receiving a placebo still experience significant therapeutic benefit. Open-label placebos, fake treatments administered without deception, work. How belief alone produces measurable changes in body chemistry. Why the brain has a mechanism that allows expectation to directly alter physiology. What this reveals about the relationship between mind and body remains incompletely understood. The most prescribed treatment in the history of medicine is the belief that treatment is happening. And it works. Fact 90. What is the unconscious mind doing? Most of what your brain does, you are not aware of. The regulation of your heartbeat, your breathing, your immune response, your hormone levels, all occurring without conscious direction. But beyond basic physiology, research suggests the unconscious mind is continuously processing information, making evaluations, and preparing responses that surface in consciousness as intuitions, impulses, and feelings with no apparent origin. Studies in cognitive psychology show that complex decisions, choosing between apartments, evaluating job candidates, assessing social situations, are sometimes made more accurately by unconscious processing than by deliberate conscious analysis. The unconscious mind appears to integrate more variables simultaneously than conscious thought can manage. But what the unconscious actually is, whether it constitutes a separate system, a set of parallel processes, or simply consciousness operating below a threshold of awareness, is not settled. Right now, beneath whatever you are consciously thinking, something else is working. Quietly, without your knowledge. 90 mysteries now. Consciousness that no one can explain. Dreams that feel more real than waking. A brain that turns off experience and turns it back on without knowing what it is turning off. You are the deepest mystery in this entire list, not the universe outside, the universe inside. 10 more, and then we rest. Fact 91. Is there other intelligent life in the universe? The universe contains an estimated 2 trillion galaxies. Each galaxy contains hundreds of billions of stars. A significant fraction of those stars have planets. A fraction of those planets sit in habitable zones where liquid water could exist. The numbers suggest life should be common, perhaps inevitable, and yet silence. No confirmed signal. No confirmed contact, no confirmed evidence of any intelligence beyond our own, despite decades of dedicated searching. This is the Fermi paradox. The contradiction between the overwhelming probability of extraterrestrial life and the complete absence of evidence for it. Proposed explanations range from the sobering to the terrifying. Life may be extraordinarily rare. Intelligence may reliably destroy itself before becoming detectable. Or something else, something we haven't considered, explains the silence. A universe this large, this old, this quiet is one of the strangest facts in science. Fact 92. Why do humans create art? No other species makes art. Chimpanzees can be taught to paint. Elephants can be trained to produce images. But no other animal spontaneously creates representations of the world, tells stories, composes music, or carves figures for no immediate survival benefit. Humans have done this for at least 75,000 years. Cave paintings in Indonesia have been dated to over 45,000 years ago. Made by people who lived without writing, without cities, without agriculture, but who felt compelled to press their hands against stone and trace the shapes of animals in firelight. Why? Proposed explanations include sexual selection, social bonding, cognitive exercise, and the externalization of mental models, none fully accounts for the universality, the antiquity, or the emotional power of art across every human culture that has ever existed. Something in us needs to make things that have no purpose beyond existing. Fact 93. Why does music make us feel? Music is organized sound, pressure waves moving through air, arriving at your ears in patterns of pitch and rhythm. There is no obvious reason it should produce emotion, and yet it does, reliably, powerfully, across every human culture ever studied. Music can produce chills, tears, euphoria, a feeling of profound sadness that is paradoxically pleasurable, a sense of connection to other people, to memories, to something larger than the self. Brain imaging shows music activates the same reward pathways as food and sex, releasing dopamine at moments of musical anticipation and resolution. The chill response, goosebumps from music, correlates with higher connectivity between auditory and emotional processing regions. But why the brain treats organized sound as emotionally significant? Why tension and resolution in pitch produce feelings analogous to human drama is not fully explained. 37 trillion cells, moved by vibrations in the air. Fact 94. What is infinity really? Infinity is not a large number. It is not the largest number. It is not a number at all. It is a concept describing something that has no end, no boundary, no final term. And mathematics has discovered something deeply strange about it. Not all infinities are the same size. The infinity of counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, forever, is a smaller infinity than the infinity of real numbers between 0 and 1. There are more points on a line segment than there are counting numbers, even though both sets are infinite. Georg Cantor proved this in the 19th century and spent the rest of his life defending the result against colleagues who found it incomprehensible. Whether physical infinity, actual infinite quantities in the real universe, exists at all, or whether infinity is only a mathematical abstraction with no physical counterpart, is genuinely unresolved. A concept the human mind invented that turned out to be stranger than the mind that made it. Fact 95. Is free will real? You feel as though you make choices. Right now, you could move your hand, you could open your eyes, you could choose to stop listening. The feeling of agency, of authorship over your own actions, is perhaps the most intimate feature of human experience, and neuroscience has complicated it significantly. In 1983, Benjamin Libet measured the brain activity preceding voluntary movement and found something unsettling. The brain prepares for a movement, a measurable electrical signal called the readiness potential, up to half a second before the person reports consciously deciding to move. The decision appears to happen before the awareness of deciding. Whether this means free will is an illusion, a story the conscious mind tells itself after the fact, or whether consciousness plays a role that current measurements miss, is one of the most debated questions in neuroscience and philosophy. You are deciding right now, or something is deciding for you. Fact 96. Why does beauty exist? Across every culture ever studied, humans agree on certain things being beautiful. Symmetrical faces, certain proportions in landscapes, specific harmonic ratios in music, mathematical elegance in equations, the particular quality of light at sunset. Beauty is not random. It is consistent enough across individuals and cultures to suggest something universal. something built into human perception rather than purely learned. But why? Evolutionary explanations propose beauty is a signal. Symmetric faces indicating genetic health, certain landscapes indicating resources and safety, harmonic sounds indicating calm environments. These explanations account for some beauty. They struggle with mathematical elegance, with abstract art, with the beauty of equations that describe phenomena no human will ever directly observe. Why the human mind finds certain arrangements of matter, sound, and light to be intrinsically, sometimes overwhelmingly beautiful, in ways that have no obvious survival benefit, remains unexplained. Fact 97. What happens to consciousness when the body dies? This is perhaps the question humans have asked longest, and it remains unanswered. Science can describe what happens to the brain as it loses oxygen. The sequence of electrical events, the cessation of metabolic activity, the physical decomposition that follows. It can measure the absence of brain activity. It can describe the biochemistry of death with increasing precision. What it cannot determine is whether consciousness, the subjective experience of being, simply ceases when the brain stops functioning, or whether it continues in some form beyond measurable biology. The near-death experiences discussed earlier suggest something occurs at the threshold. Whether those experiences are produced by a dying brain or reflect something beyond it cannot be resolved by current neuroscience. Every human who has ever lived has faced this question. None has returned with a verified answer. The most personal mystery, still open. Fact 98. Will the universe end? The universe began. Most models of cosmology suggest it will also end. The most likely scenario, given current understanding of dark energy, is the Big Freeze. The universe continuing to expand, galaxies drifting apart until they are no longer visible to each other. Stars slowly exhausting their fuel over trillions of years, the last black holes eventually evaporating through Hawking radiation until the universe reaches a state of maximum entropy. Cold, dark, diffuse, and essentially featureless. Not an explosion, not a collapse, just a slow, quiet dimming. Other scenarios exist. The Big Rip, in which dark energy eventually tears apart galaxies, stars, planets, and finally atoms themselves. The Big Crunch, in which gravity eventually reverses the expansion. Which scenario is correct? Or whether reality holds a surprise not yet in any model, is unknown. The universe began in a moment we cannot see past. It may end in one, too. Fact 99. What will the last star look like? Right now, the universe is in what astronomers call the stelliferous era, the age of stars. For roughly 100 trillion years from now, stars will continue to form and burn. But the raw material, gas and dust, is slowly being consumed. Star formation will gradually slow, then stop. Existing stars will exhaust their fuel and die. The last stars to survive will be red dwarfs, small, cool, extraordinarily efficient. Burning so slowly, they will outlast our sun by a factor of 1,000. The very last star, a dim red dwarf in a galaxy long since emptied of everything else, will eventually exhaust even its minimal fuel supply. It will not explode. It will not collapse dramatically. It will simply cool, slowly fading from red to black over billions of years, becoming a cold, dark object drifting in silence, the last light in the universe, going out quietly. Fact 100. Why does the universe exist for us to wonder about it? We have arrived at the final mystery. Not the largest, not the most technically complex, but perhaps the deepest. The universe is 3.8 billion years old. For the vast majority of that time, nothing wondered about it. Matter moved, energy radiated, galaxies formed and collided, stars burned and died, all of it occurring without observation, without awareness, without meaning. Then, on one small planet around one ordinary star, matter organized itself into something that could ask why. That could look up at the night sky and feel something. That could lie in the darkness and wonder not just what the universe is, but why it exists at all, why it follows laws, why those laws permit complexity, why complexity permits life, why life permits awareness, and why awareness produces, in the middle of an ordinary night, the quiet astonishment of being here. There is no settled scientific answer, only the question, and you asking it. 100 mysteries. From the first question, why anything exists at all, to the last, why something exists that can ask. The circle is complete now. Rest. And now the questions grow quiet, not because they've been answered, because some questions are large enough that simply sitting with them is enough. We have traveled far tonight, from the moment before time existed, that impossible stillness before the Big Bang, all the way to this moment, this room, this breath. We moved through a universe held together by matter no one has ever seen. We descended into an ocean that covers most of this world and remains in its deepest places, unknown. We looked at consciousness, the awareness you are using right now to follow these words, and found that science cannot yet explain what it is or what happens to it when the body it inhabits grows still. 100 mysteries, 100 places where human knowledge walked to the edge and stopped. And somewhere in all of it, there was you, breathing slowly, thoughts softening. You are not separate from any of this. The iron in your blood was forged in a star that died before our sun existed. The water in your body arrived from across the solar system. The atoms of your bones trace back to the first 3 minutes after everything began. You are not an observer of the universe. You are the part of it that learned to wonder. The mysteries will be there tomorrow. Dark matter will still be invisible. The wow signal will still be unexplained. The last star, 100 trillion years from now, will still go out quietly, whether or not anything is watching. The universe keeps its secrets patiently. Tonight, that patience is yours. May your rest be as deep as the ocean floor, as quiet as the space between galaxies, as still as the moment before the universe decided to begin. If you'd like more journeys like this one, subscribing means the next mystery is always waiting. But for now, let the questions rest beside you. The universe has been holding you for 13.8 billion years. It knows how. Good night.